place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, December 15, 2020. I think it's the 16th, actually. I'm sorry. Today is Monday, December 16th, 2024. This is episode 985 of Living Free in Tennessee. It's a Monday show, and it's our last Monday show of 2024. So that happened fast, didn't it? Like this year has flown by. Anyway, today I've got my notes on paper. What we're going to talk about is changing the one person who is entirely in your control, and that's you. That's the only person you can actually get to do what you want them to do all the time. And well, maybe you can't even get yourself to do that. I don't know. We're going to talk about that though today. And I also will reveal my word of the year for 2025, as well as go through our usual Monday segments. If you're in the live stream today, I'd love to hear from you. If you have questions or comments, write the word question or comments in all caps. I'm on a tiny little screen in my lap. And so I'll just be scrolling through that and marking them to build into the show as we go. And if you're just saying happy Monday, like Pippinized is right now, I'm not going to spend the show looking down at my computer is what I'm saying, because you guys are here and my computer's there. And usually I have the computer and the camera closer to each other. But because it's the last Monday of today's show, I thought I'd already start the transition into the Christmas pause time. So I wanted to record it in my living room, and that's the coffee station behind me, and that's the Christmas tree that we're going to get all decorated up at the Living Free in Tennessee party on Saturday. Which, by the way, if you're coming, you should totally let me know. livingfreeintennessee.com, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. And I have an RSVP form, so I have some idea of how many people are coming. It's also a meetup for our Homesteaders Alliance group, as well as I invited all the regional mags to it as well, because it's the end of the year. We should hang out and have a good time. Our featured event, though, is not that. The featured event is the Night Before Christmas series. If you are new to the podcast, what you don't know is every year we lead up to Christmas with a series of readings of the night before Christmas. And it all started because I remember as a child, when we would unpack the Christmas decorations, there was a little book in there, and it was the poem, The Night Before Christmas. And I just loved the poem, and I loved having it read to me. And then in later years, I would read it over and over and over and over and over. And my parents made Christmas pretty magical. They did a great job of that. And I think it's great and nice to have magic in your life. So when I come into this season, I'm often thinking of what's the magic? How am I making magic? The one year I didn't participate in Christmas, it was a bummer of a year. I remember just why didn't I put a tree up, or why didn't I do something? And it was because I wasn't planning to be home, but then I totally missed that thing. So I started by reading The Night Before Christmas on my podcast, in part in tribute to a friend whose husband died for her kids, when they're not even kids anymore. That's kind of funny. But then I became aware that there are a lot of different versions of the poem, like the Redneck Night Before Christmas, or the Intellectual Night Before Christmas, or the Aussie Night Before Christmas. So over the years, what's happened is you all, the listeners, there's occasion one. The person who sent me the occasion one was not super excited that I asked them to also record it, but they did a great job. You, the listeners, have sent different versions to me, and so I play them. They're read by different Living Free in Tennessee community members, and we have so many of them now that tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central, the first in the series of The Night Before Christmas are going to come out. And what will happen is they'll come out as little episodes, 5 p.m. every night, starting tomorrow until the actual night before Christmas. And you can listen to those just by on your podcatcher, or go to livingfreeintennessee.com and, click on the episode. You can hear it. Somebody's saying Klingon Night Before Christmas. I don't have one of those, but if one exists and it's entertaining, then by all means, send it to me. I'm not sure how many people would understand it if it's in Klingon. So I feel like it should be the English version from the Klingon perspective, if it's going to be accessible to our friends. Okay, our first sponsor to thank before we jump into our first segment is Discount Mylar Bags. Hey, why not give one of your prepper friends a really cool present this year? Go to Discount Mylar Bags, find some, and just ship them straight to that person, man. Easy peasy, done. And then they can start storing their food in really nice Mylar bags and come to know a company that's based in Tennessee, run by a friend of mine, also the person who provides the Hollow Roast bags, by the way. And over on Discount Mylar Bags, you have resources in the upper right-hand corner of how to size bags, how to choose your O2 absorbers, those sorts of things, and thoughts about storing foods in general. But the cool thing they've done is they source Mylar bags and other food preservation items in bulk and pass on the savings to you. Check them out at discountmylarbags.com. Our second sponsor of today's show is Agorist Tax Advice. I just had my end of year meeting with Matthew, actually. So Matthew Sursley from Agorist Tax Advice goes through all of your finances and just talks to you about what write-offs you might be wanting to track, if your business is structured properly, or if there are other alternative structures. I had a really great conversation with him about structuring things a little differently between SRF and LFTN, for example. I had some questions about that. He is a lawyer. He's an attorney. So it's that perspective on your finances so that you can optimize how you're structured, take advantage of the tax code, and keep more of your money in your pocket. Find out more at agoristtaxadvice.com. With that, it's time for our first segment of today's show, and that's Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we talk about using what you store and storing what you use, which is not how a lot of people start their pantries. Like when they realize, gee, maybe I should store some food, they have a tendency to buy the things that are non-perishable in large amounts so that they're covered. And actually, if you only have a week or two to prepare for not having access to the supply chain, that's actually not a bad way to go, because then you have something, right? But what's better is to track the way that you eat and live and the supplies that your household needs, even clothing. I've even started thinking of clothing as a pantry item here, where I'm like, well, I know I go through this many pair of jeans a year, so when they're on sale, I'll buy that many pair of jeans, and it works for me. That probably doesn't work for everybody, because other people spend a lot more time thinking about what their outfits look like, and I basically just wear a uniform. It's pretty much the same thing every day unless I'm doing something different. You know, like yesterday, the uniform I wore was the choir dress for the choir concert. Still a uniform, though. It was still a uniform. Anyway, but that's basically what we talk about in Tales from the Prepper Pantry. And at this point, what do I got on my notes? I've got a whole bunch of segments I was supposed to do before Tales in the Prepper Pantry, so we're just going to skip. Yes. Okay, so this weekend, I had a choir concert. So that means dress rehearsal. That means the concert. I usually go out to dinner after the concert, which I did with some friends. And that means I didn't spend as much time homesteading or doing Hollow Roast because, of course, we shipped coffee on Saturday because Christmas deadline for mailing is coming. I'm trying to get the coffee out as fast as I can within the context of when the mailman comes. And today, I got it out early, and it was a good thing because the mailman's boss came and picked up packages for him, which means that she was here super early. Anyway, what I managed to do was something that I do tend to put off, which is I'm very good at drying herbs and things for teas, but I also just leave them hanging all year long until they're really in my way. So I decided that this year was going to be different, and I packaged up the dried dill, the dried sage, so I had like peppermint hanging. I found some Mexican tarragon hanging. That was pretty cool because that's really delicious in tea. It kind of has an anise flavor, so that was nice. And just whatever, I had a lot of goldenrod, other herbal things that we had hanging up in here, so that I can take back my seed starting shelf. I'm going to move it out of my kitchen where I stuck it last year because I had nowhere to put it, and get that done before everybody comes on the weekend. So we have a little bit more space in the house when people are coming in and out of the house. But also, I wanted that stuff safely in jars because I'm like, if you just hang them in the air and they're not contained, I feel like their flavor gets weaker faster. So now they're safely in mason jars and good to go. I do need to can tomatoes for my freezer. I still haven't. I saw that Dawn Gorham got hers done this week, but not I. Okay. doing an experiment with beef breakfast sausage. And my Grandpa Darby's sausage recipe, which is in my cookbook, Cook With What You Have, is something that I use, and we serve that at every spring workshop so people can see what that tastes like. It's like a homemade breakfast sausage, right? And I don't have a lot of ground pork. I don't have any ground pork actually right now. And so there's been this like thing going on where I buy breakfast sausage at the store because we want breakfast meats. And then like we've had tacos for breakfast and some other stuff. And finally I was like, I know, I'll just take all of the because I have a ton of ground beef, right? I'll take the ground beef and make it into breakfast sausage and see how it tastes. So I've already adjusted my grandpa's recipe for my taste, which means I added some garlic to his recipe. And he has MSG as one of the ingredients. I don't put a MSG in mine. So anyway, I took the recipe and tried it with my first round of 4.5 pounds of ground beef and made it. And it tastes good, but I think it needs a little bit more sage and a little bit more nutmeg. So that's what I'll do the next round. I have another 4.5 pounds defrosting because that's the easiest solution. We actually ended up, the only parts of the cows from last year that are left at this point are a little bit of ground beef. I'm actually going to be using the last of that, I believe, right now. And then, some of the other, I've cooked all the hearts at this point. Liver is left, but that's a different story. And then there's like some spare ribs, and I think I have one roast left. So we're almost through all of the cows from last year. And that's good because the new cows are arriving, right? Like I bought a quarter cow from Ken Esch. I bought a half cow that I always split with my friend. And then I have another whole cow coming. So I just want to get all of those things, cycling through so I don't end up with something stuck in my freezer that goes bad. And then I feel like I'm being wasteful. That being said, like the financial implication of buying whole animals or half animals like that are that my cost is way lower than the grocery store. And I'm going to track that a little bit more because what happened structurally this year, the quarter cow I bought from Ken, I bought with my money. The half cow, if I'm going to tap into that cow, I buy it from my company. My company bought it and we use it for like events and stuff. So that'll actually make me a little bit more aware of what the cost is for. Can you hear my phone? It's totally ringing. It's Google. Google, stop calling me. I'm not going to ever answer. Anyway, it's very distracting to have your phone ringing in the background too. I should have put it on silent. Usually it's in another room. Now I'm in that other room. So I'll be buying it from the company. And that's part of just our plans to not have to, because what I did before was I would have to sell it from me to the company for events. It just got weird. And so I was like, the other way makes more sense. We'll see how fast we go through a quarter of the cow, and then I'll go from there. And then I can have a better idea of what we're spending just in general, like 100% on us and not related to also events that we do. The other thing is that apparently people went nuts and shopped their butts off, A, or B, stores stocked less because they thought people were going to spend less. I'd be interesting to see like what the statistics on that are, because I went to the stores this weekend because I have a party coming up, and like I like to go to Aldi because that's the place I can get German treats, like German goodies that they would have at Christmas time in Germany. And in former years, I've done it a little earlier in the year, but I decided because I'm committed to being better disciplined about my diet, I didn't want the temptation of the German goodies here, right? So what I did is I waited until this week to go buy the German goodies, and I thought I'd get a Stollen and a few other things, and I got there and all of the German goodies are gone, and all they have are like Hershey bars and other random like crap chocolate is what they have. And, like none of the cookies or the Italian cakes, like they have this one Italian cake that's pretty good. And I usually put those out at the party. So I do this for the party, put it out at the party, send it off with people, and or get rid of it immediately so it's not in the house. That's my trick. So this year at the holiday party, we have I found one kind of German cookie left. And then I think I'm going to make a cheesecake because that'll be the other treat, because there's just no other stuff. And then I have a few, what do I have over there? I have a pineapple and olives and cheese and crackers and meats and that sort of thing. But on the sweet side, it's just not going to be very sweet at the party this year unless y'all bring cookies. So yeah. Margot says, I have a few things in the pantry that we'll never eat. Time to get rid of them. Yep. That's something that in the next 2 weeks, when I am doing my 2-week break that starts on Saturday like Saturday, and then we don't come back for 2 weeks for the podcast. I'm taking a pretty hard look at the pantry too, because my whole pantry is out under my carport at the moment, getting exposed to outside air, but at least it's covered. And I need to look at what's there and decide if it can, like, if it can stay in that situation until the prepper pantry is ready to put stuff back in it. But B, also, how much of that stuff are we really going to use? Because I'm still storing some grains that we don't eat really. And that's fine. Like, I just think I need to store fewer of them, and because I do still use wheat flour sometimes. And I do that by getting into my grain storage, which is unground wheat. I grind it and then we use it, to thicken a gravy. Or if I feel like the one time of year I make bread, I'll do that. Just so I know that it's good stuff. But yeah. So I think an annual critical look at your pantry is a great idea. Whenever you do it, you can do it as part of your spring cleaning. You can do it in the middle of summer. I have this 2 weeks where the goal is to set the foundation for 2025. So things are working. Last year I was still working on construction, and this year there will be some of that too. But last year I was just trying to make it so I could be in my house. This year I'm looking forward to having the actual 2 weeks focused on what I want to focus on. So that'll be fun. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Margot also says maybe add some liver to the beef sausage. I could. I can taste the liver through the ground meat when it's mixed in. It's not the end of the world, but I don't love that flavor. I take most of my liver freeze dried in pill form. So that's how I get liver. I've just always had a big distaste for how it tastes for whatever reason. And it's weird because I'm pretty open to flavors, but there is an underlying flavor there. One of the things I noticed about liver in general is what was it? It was a presenter at Self-Reliance Festival. And who was it? It was the guys who do the butchering. I can't remember their name right now. They're awesome too. Something Homestead. Anyway, they talked about if you don't freeze liver and you just cook it fresh, it doesn't have that weird metallic flavor. So next time we process an animal and the liver is fresh, I'm going to ask Nighthawk to do his liver and onions with that and see if I like the flavor better. Because it's something where I can eat it. It's just distasteful. So it's not like I gag and can't swallow it. It's just distasteful. And I don't like to eat things that are distasteful unless there's a really compelling reason for it. But I know a lot of people do mix their liver into their ground meat in general. So yeah. Next year, tell me what you want and I'll send you a parcel of goodies. Thanks, Mona. Yeah, it's like, I like the Stollen, and there's some other like little packages of cookies I really like, and chocolates that are delicious. And at this point, I can't remember what's in Germany in particular, specifically, because I haven't been there at Christmas time. But like, I like to do a mulled wine, which is Glühwein, and like, so they have the Glühwein packets in Germany. We don't get those here. I think sometimes I see them at a German grocer when I'm out and about in another town, and I'm like, oh, there's a Glühwein packet. Like, a friend of mine used to mail me those once a year. That was kind of fun. And then I just add it to red wine. But I may just put a Christmas market trip on my to-do list sometime in the next 5 years and head out to Germany and go to the market and do all the things that are fun to do. So anyway, that's the deal in the pantry. I mentioned that I skipped segments, and that's because I added a segment today, listener feedback. And this was in response to I'm going to have to read this. It's like a letter here. Somebody sent me an email response to the boundary episode that we did last Monday, and I wanted to read this. So I have a family member that doesn't respect anyone's boundaries. They instigate the uncomfortable conversations just to cause tension. They bring up horrible things that have happened to you and rub them in your face and laugh about it. I cut this person out of my life 5 years ago. I was so much happier and healthier mentally. Me not having this person in my life caused family tension, and that was constantly thrown at me. So basically, so here's the scenario. somebody makes everybody feel bad, is tolerated by everybody, and then this person cuts that person out of their life, and then the family's mad at this person for doing that, and putting pressure on the person to do that. This person is my mother. 2 years ago, my mother's husband got very sick, and I chose to go see her and him right before he passed away. When I opened that door, the rest of my family got off my back. And I currently have a quote unquote relationship with my mother, but the more I give, the more she wants. She acted somewhat normal for about a year, and now she's back to her constant digging and trying to start shit. I have to ignore her comments and change the subject regularly. And this is at like family events, right? Pretty much my whole family dynamic is toxic. I have a few more crazy Ians hanging around from the tree. Deflecting and subject changing is a skill, but also exhausting. Stepping away to breathe is also important. Limiting time spent is a requirement for sanity. And honestly, a couple of beers, Honestly, a couple of beers is one way I stay calm at family functions. For now, I'm choosing not to put myself in the situation in for now, I'm choosing to put myself in the situation in moderation. I hate it and have begun to dread it again, but it's a choice I've made to keep the peace between our family members. My recommendation is to cut the toxic people out of your life, no matter who they are, and don't let them back in because they won't change. Because you're worth so much more than being someone's doormat whenever they're, or whoever they are to you. So this was in response to somebody had asked, what do I do if the problem is everybody at the family gathering tolerates bad behavior from somebody? And my thought was leave, tell them what's up and then leave. This person did that and then has let the mother back in. And that's sad to me because I know who you are and you're a very nice person and nobody should treat you like that. And we all make mistakes. Like we all have stuff we've done that we learn some hard lessons from, right? We're like, maybe I shouldn't have behaved that way. And if that stuff's like constantly thrown up in your face, and imagine like your mother knows it all. Like you don't need to keep bringing the things up, right? That's a lesson. You don't need to keep bringing the things up. You don't want it done to you. Like when we've moved on, and letting people move on and forgiving people and going on with life is important. Live stream schedule this week. Tomorrow I'm live at 9:30 in the morning again, which is our usual time. I'm going to be on with Becky Cook and Toolman Tim Cook, and we're going to talk about, we've all like kind of gone through the same thing in our businesses where we've realized it's better to focus on the most important things and cut some things. And so we're going to talk about that. Becky, if you don't know, runs a child care empire in Canada. And then Tim is changing how he does his content creation. And I, as you all know, I'm doing a lot more pushing on the coffee. In fact, I just put a new ad out right before this podcast. That's why I'm actually reading from random pieces of paper, including this. This is like old school podcast notes right here that I've got going on, where I actually sat down and wrote it with a pen because I was like, man, I've got this much time to get this done. I had to get the orders out because that was super important to me. And the podcast is super important to me. And the fastest way I get that done is draw on a piece of paper rather than type on a piece of paper. It's like there's more, it's like it goes from that to the typed in my world. But back in the day when I was first starting the podcast, I was just reading from the paper. And the only reason I went as far as typed is this is the show notes you see on the website, right? It's just that I have them on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Okay, next up, we have the weekly shopping report from Joe. This is our last shopping report of the year, but I noticed that CNN put out an article about how grocery prices are way up again, citing eggs, beef, and a third thing I can't remember what. Sugary soda drinks. So apparently people are noticing that groceries went up again. I notice it every time I go to the grocery store. I'm like, holy cow. Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, so here's the notes from Joe. He said he went to the Dollar Tree first and the stock levels look good. I could see some signs of rotation with some new products in the drinks area and depletion, but not exhaustion of others. We didn't go in the Home Depot, but the online price of a 2x4x8 is still $3.85. Aldi was last. Stock levels don't look notably different from our last Friday visit. My preferred variety of chocolate, 70% cocoa, was back in stock, and there wasn't much of it. Staple prices were bread, $1.39, eggs, $3.96. That's $4 a dozen for cheap ass disgusting eggs. So when your farmer is asking you for $5 or $6, I'm just saying you're getting a much better product. Okay, back to the notes. Whole milk $2.87, that's down. Heavy cream is $5.39. Orange juice $3.69. That was another thing CNN said is way up in price. Butter $3.49, down. That's good. Bacon $3.99. Potatoes $3.69. Sugar $2.69, flour $1.79, and 80% lean ground beef $3.99, which is down a little bit, counter to the CNN article, but not really. Someone in this house drinks soda, and it's crazy expensive now. Yeah, that's what Margot's saying. That I'm guessing it's not Margot. They had cantaloupes this week. I'm not sure about untainted regular gasoline. The Wiggles we had that we don't normally visit had it at $3.49 a gallon, which is a 20-cent decrease. But I don't recall looking at the station where I usually get the price. Okay, so that is the shopping report from Joe. One time I asked how much you guys like that report. When I saw that article from CNN where they're like, well, it's up, but not, it's just isolated things, and it's not really a thing, and it's because of specific incidents. No. Yes, it's because of specific incidents, and prices have been going up because the way they measure inflation doesn't measure the actual things we use every day. So we'll be keeping the shopping reports coming into 2025. I got a lot of feedback when I was like, do we keep doing the shopping report? And people were like, it's kind of interesting to hear about, this is coming out of Powell, Tennessee, I believe. And it's interesting to hear where it is, because then I can be like, well, at my Aldi, that is a totally different price, which regional prices totally happen. In fact, here, Tractor Supply, so Smithville is 25 minutes for me, and Cookeville is 35 minutes for me. And if I buy things at Smithville, they're less expensive than Tractor Supply in Cookeville. And actually, if I go out to White County, the Tractor Supply there is even less. So depending where you are, they do adjust prices. Walmart does it too. And it's partially based on what people in that area pay. I think it's also partially based on overhead costs. I do know also that the sales tax in Smithville in the county, DeKalb County, is different than the sales tax in Putnam County, which is where Cookeville is. So that makes a big difference. Okay, next up, we have Operation Independence. This is where I talk about building local ongoing revenue into our lives, and that's one of my big things, is creating a life that sustains itself based on what we're doing, producing value, the value coming in, so that it's a sustainable monetary situation rather than dependent on an external job source, which is, while I was running a nonprofit, I was pretty dependent on primarily one funder or two funders. And so if they had gotten mad, I would have been screwed. It was like 80% of the income for the whole organization was coming from two different sources. So that was partially, and then 100% of my income was dependent on the nonprofit, right? So that was not a good position to be in. And I ended up doing a lot of things that I would not have done that way. I did them that way to keep those sources happy. Oh, it looks like we're getting a visit from, yeah, I don't think you should go over there, Tigger. Tigger's here, my cat, who is almost 18 years old, and he is not feeling great, but apparently he got up and wanted to come say hi, and then he noticed there was another cat next to me right over here. Mortimer's on my side. So yeah. Margot says, where we live, grocery stores prices are higher than across the bridge. I drive over the bridge to save money. Yeah, I mean, if it's easy, it makes sense, but if you spend more gas saving money, then it doesn't make sense to drive places. So anyway, on this section, I don't have anything to report about local ongoing revenue other than this. Christmas is like a little over a week away, right? And at Christmas time, we have a tendency to give gifts to people. And it becomes almost a thing of pressure. So two things. For those of you who know me, if I give you a gift, I don't have like a gift list that I give gifts to these people every year, but sometimes I see a thing and I know a person and I'm like, hey, it's Christmas time and that thing should go to that person. And so I buy a gift. I have zero expectations that I also am supposed to receive a gift. So that may not be true in your family. in our family, that's true. And we had we like literally had the blunt discussion early on about that when like, because we were always like, what does this person need? And then the money was adding up and blah, 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 blah. And finally I'm like, hey, how about this year? Like the girls, my nieces get presents, but we don't do anything else. And we just spend time with each other because that's more important anyway. And and we did that. And now we just sort of give gifts if we think of something. Um, and that works. And we try to give the kind of gifts that are consumable. So I'm saying all of this because if you are where I was when I started the segment Operation Independence, I was in a situation where I had a lot of debt that needed to be paid off, and I was going further into debt every month. And so it was time to make a change. And the change had to come from me. And um, it's very hard to resist the spend lots of money at Christmas thing and get everybody gifts and keep up with the Joneses. But if you're building the life that you choose on your terms, this is a great year to start practicing that, right? It's just, you can do a handmade thing if you really want to give somebody a thing. You can do a service that's like, one time I gave somebody a day in their kitchen redoing their pantry. I gave that to a friend once. And that didn't cost me, like that cost me the gas to drive to their house and do it. So you can do things like that. And if people don't appreciate that and don't support you, then we need to go back to the boundary episode and ask ourselves, is this person really supportive of me? Like, are they in a relationship with me for monetary gain? Are they using me, or do they just not get it? Do I need to have a longer conversation with them about why this is happening? But it might be somebody that's on the list to cut at that point because, the pressure is high. So I put it under Operation Independence just because spending too much money at Christmas and going into debt over Christmas just sets you up for a harder start in January, when people typically spend less money in January. Like Holler Roast has had a banner month this month. Depending on how this week goes, we may have a record month. And it's like, something happened right after Thanksgiving, like the cork came out and everybody wanted to buy coffee. And I was like, sweet, I shall roast and ship coffee. But I also expect that once sort of like the glut of Christmas is over, that we're going to see some people going, oh dear, why did I do that? Why did I spend all that money? David says, as a mentor said to me, are you their friend or are they just your friend? Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Beth Emily says, I was broke on Mother's Day and seriously cleaned out my mom's fridge. She talked about it for years. Yeah. Your mom must love you and not be in it for just the gifts you're giving her. That's good. That's a good characteristic in a mom. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. It's, there are things I like about Christmas, and I do like getting gifts from people. But like, I remember as a kid, the scale of gifts that happened, like the glut of gifts and the pressure. And I just think, better not to have that pressure and better not to put that pressure on other people. Right. So that's the deal. We're having somebody sneak in the door while I'm live on the internet. Is the decorating committee here? The decorating committee has arrived. Tracy has been decorating in advance of the party, and she's outside. She always has this way of showing up when I'm live, though. So she's like, I knew it. I was like, yeah, I know, because it's Monday from 2 to 3. Anyway, so we're ready for the main topic of today's show, which is renew yourself and renew your world. And I got to thinking about this because, I've talked to a lot of people this year who are like kind of downtrodden almost after the year. Like they feel stressed out and they feel tired and they feel like they can't really talk to people about what they really think. And that's a tough position to be in. And when you do that day to day to day to day, and you talk about that day to day to day to day, what can happen is that you set yourself up for a negative perspective. And it's kind of like when you have a house and you don't keep up on the paint, and the weather starts getting into your siding, and then it starts looking shabby, and then it starts causing some minor damage, which sets the foundation for major damage. And then you look at it, it's overwhelming. You're like, screw it, and you leave it. Next thing you know, you have to replace all the siding in your house. But if instead of doing that, you take a look back and go, you know what, that needs some renewal, that needs some refreshing, that needs some renovation, and you deal with it early, then you keep the siding, your house looks better, and you feel better. And it's the same with you. So that's why I chose this topic today, because I'm hearing the rumblings, right? And we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. I didn't just come up with that tagline easily. The word choose is very important in that. And it goes back to when I first moved to the country. I was all excited about homesteading, and I kept looking at was it Southern Living? Yeah, Southern Living magazine. I had a subscription to it, and I would look at these pictures of people's, like houses, and they're in the country with white sofas, and it's like, it's easy to keep my white sofa clean because, have you been to my house? Because I can just take the covers off and wash them. You don't have animals, do you? You don't have actual people in your life who go outside and work and then don't take their overalls off and sit on your sofa. Okay. Two different types of country living right there. I'll tell you that. Now, some people I know are able to instigate controls to such an extent they don't have any animals in their house, and they don't get muddy when they're outside working in the yard, and they don't bring the mud in the house, and that's that's the way it works. Well, that's not the way my life works. And I kept feeling like I had to do more decorating or more this or more that every time that magazine would come out. And one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to cancel my subscription to Southern Living, because all of these beautiful magazine perfect places are not where I live. And I live this way by choice. Like, I choose to have 2 dogs who run around outside and play and have a great time. And we hike in the woods. When they come back, if it's been raining like it's been raining this week, they're muddy. And then they walk in the house, and then, try as I might to get those paws clean, they come galloping in, and I'm like literally looking at paw prints across my floor right now from the dogs, because I need to mop, right? It's a choice I've made. Likewise, by raising livestock and having a lot of dirty jobs on the homestead, the people get dirty too, and we track in dirt. I think I can reduce that by putting a concrete pad out front of my house so that it gets dirty and I can hose it off. But for now, I don't have that concrete pad, and it is what it is, right? So the life I choose to live has some dirt in it, and it's real. And it has some blood and guts in it because we process animals, and it has some hard work in it. And I actually enjoy that. I enjoy the fruits of my labor, but I also enjoy the labor part of my labor. And not everybody would enjoy that, but I do. And so when I came up with the tagline for the Living Free in Tennessee podcast, I was talking about my journey to true freedom, which is living the life I want to live, the life I choose. Because wanting something means you're not there yet, right? But choosing something means I've made the choice to do this thing. And one of the things I've chosen to do is live closer to the land and closer to my food, and cook more from scratch in ways most people just don't in our society. I like it. And I have fun doing it. So, and if the life you choose is to be a runway model in New York, then fine. You can still listen to my podcast. I support you in your choice. That's not the life I would choose, but that's the life you choose. And everybody's life is different. And true freedom is choosing and then going for it and being able to do that. And whenever there's outside influences keeping you from doing that, whether it be government regulation or something else, toxic relationships, those are the things you got to deal with. That's why a podcast about building a life based on freedom talks about mental health, addiction problems, homesteading, building a business because you need money, right? Like the more wealth you have, the easier it is to protect your freedom, by the way, because then you don't get like tricked into for survival doing something you don't want to do. So anyway, that's why we talk about all of those things here. And it kind of makes me wonder, what does the Living Free in Tennessee podcast community want to see from the podcast next year? Have you thought about that? I'd love to hear, because I know after focusing on the word hone this year, I have dropped some things. And one of the things I've dropped is we've gone down from 4 episodes a week to 3, with the Tuesday show. My live stream with John and Jack is just once a month. And then I fit in interviews on that Tuesday show. And I wonder if 3 episodes is what you all want to hear. We started out once a week. We could go back down again. I don't know. Like, is it too much content for you to consume? That's the kind of feedback I'd like to hear. Or what do you want to hear more about? That would help me, help you, help me, help you. Yeah, something like that. Beth Emily says 35 later. I still have 2 dogs. Yeah. I like having 2 dogs. I keep seeing another dog that I might want to adopt sometimes, and I don't adopt those dogs, and other people adopt those dogs. But these 2 dogs are great. One of them is better trained than the other. And until the other passes away, which she's old, I don't want to bring a dog in, because my next dog is going to be even better trained than the dog that's well trained. Because I realized after meeting Joel that, like, so Sage, my dog who died, was the best trained dog. But that did not translate to Cece. And it sort of translated to Chestnut, and then I worked on it with Chestnut more. When I've worked on it with Cece, she's a lover, not a trainer. And while I could train her into being the best behaved dog ever, she's so old, I don't want to do that. So, I just want her to enjoy the rest of her life. And then the next dog, so I don't want her to teach bad habits, in other words. So Tactical just walked in, and now he's talking to Cece, who's very excited to see him with her little tail, like wagging. So, what are you going to build for yourself next year? Because we talk about renewing yourself. There's, the coat of paint on your house, but there's also the word new in renew. So what are you doing that's new? Anything? New could simply be you're going to be better at something, or it could be, you know what? Like Amy Dingman at A Farmer's Kind of Life. This year, what she did that was new? Rabbits. She started raising rabbits. She's wanted to raise rabbits for a few years. And now she gets to learn all about rabbits, right? So what are you building? And are you taking time to renew yourself? So that also means, are you putting the coat of paint on yourself? Because when you are healthy, when you're stable, when you're living the life you choose, when you're building that right now, you become the strength from which the people around you become the example, start doing the same thing. And when we look at the world and we bemoan how society is, unhealthy, toxic, blah, 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 big problems, I think the solution has to come from the individual. It has to come from us. There's no big get involved and make everybody change their lives. Just change your life. Build the life you choose. Renew yourself. Help those around you renew themselves. And the stronger your communities are, the better off we all are long term. And the stronger we are when problems happen as a result of whatever toxicity is in our society, right? So anyway, that's my thought. So this means having the mental discipline to walk away from the fear when you shouldn't be exposing yourself to the fear. By which I mean, how many of you have noticed that there's drones in New Jersey and New York and some other places that nobody knows what they are? Anybody notice that has happened? So I started hearing about, apparently drones have been around since mid-November. I started hearing about drones a few weeks ago, and I haven't put much time into it because I'm not there, I'm here. And while I would care if they were attacking us and people were dying, like I would care, I also know about how much I can do to stop those drones right now. And what I can do is build as stable a life as I can and better relationships with my friends and family. That's what I can do. But today, it was posited that the drones are looking for some sort of chemical weapon or radiation or toxic spill or something. And that caused a whole, so there's been fear about the drones. That caused a whole new wave of fear about the drones. And I just think if we're building the life that we want to live, the life we choose, absolutely. If that's a risk and you live where that might be, you might want to think about what you're doing for the next couple of weeks. Might be a good time to take a Christmas vacation somewhere else, right? But other than that, I don't know what we can do about it. But what we can do is build a better environment around us immediately. And if there's a time where there's an opportunity for us to do something helpful related to the drones, then by all means, you're in a stronger position to do that, right? Because that's where I think we kind of don't connect the dots, where we're like, crazy news fear cycle, also a horrible thing happening. I can't do anything about it. So if I focus on it, then I don't focus on building positive stuff. Well, sometimes the crazy news cycle is flooding in East Tennessee, and you're close enough to do something about it. So you do something about it. And then when you do something about it, you do it in a way that actually helps people. And that actually makes a better world. That's what I mean by if you renew yourself, the world around you will renew, because you have a strength from which to do that, right? So we're at the time of year where it's time to make resolutions, right? It's time for your New Year's resolution. Does anybody here in the comments have a resolution they're thinking of doing? If so, like, write it down. What are you going to do differently next year to make yourself better? Anything? Anybody have one? Is anybody going to start exercising more? Or growing more of their own food? Or spending more time with their cat? I'm just curious, because this is the time of year we talk about those things. Everybody's afraid to write anything in the comments right now, so I'm not seeing any comments come through. But if you have a resolution that you're planning to start, I have a question. Do you guys know what the question is? I bet you do. That's right. Why not start now? Why not start now? I made a decision. So and it has nothing to do with the time of year, but it did sort of happen this month. I'm going to change how I do exercise in the morning. And the change I want to make for next year is that when I get up, because I used to get up and go for a walk. Margot says I don't do resolutions, but I'm always trying to better myself. Yeah. I've been having a lot of like weird things this year physically. And Rachel says, no resolution goals. I'm starting now. Good, Rachel. Why not start now? I am going to be starting with Pilates in the morning, which helps align my back and remind me to use my core strength. And so I decided that's what needs to happen in addition to the swim spa, that like the swimming every day. And so today when I got up, you know what I did? Pilates. Because if you wait till the new year, then you're just procrastinating and you're not developing the habit. And the habit I want to change is that I start 6 out of 7 days, 5 out of 7 days is acceptable, with a short Pilates routine. I could do yoga too. That's fine. Something that sort of gets me stretched and the core engaged, so that I don't have the low back pain I have a tendency to have. Because my low back pain, I should get it looked at, but it does better when my core is engaged. Like it's like everything's more stable. And whenever I walk away from that, it's not great. So I've been getting back into shape in the swim spa, but you can only do so much with the same kind of exercise. So that's what I decided my quote unquote New Year's resolution is, but I'm not doing it in the new year. I'm doing it now because when you start a habit, you commit. And committing means no matter what, right? So why wait until January? If you wait until January, you're just setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up to start, not take it seriously, and then not follow through. Which there was something I committed to doing in October that I haven't followed through with very well. And I finally figured out today it's because my low back hurts every time I do it, not if I do Pilates first. So that made a huge difference. But I kept putting it off because I was like, then my back's going to hurt for the rest of the day. And I don't want to do that thing. And it was an exercise thing. So anyway, start now. And if you're hearing this going, but I can't because what I want to do is eat better and we're about to have all the treats, eat better every day but Christmas. Start now. Do it. Have your Christmas. Do it again, like whatever that is. And a lot of people want to lose weight in January. It's why the health clubs have all those discounted membership programs, and then you get stuck in that monthly billing, and then then you're in trouble. So anyway, but back to Renew. Yesterday I had a sort of a spiritual renewal because we sang a Christmas concert. And I didn't realize how much I needed that until the concert was over. And like I go to choir rehearsal every Monday, and we had dress rehearsal Saturday, and it was like something changed for the concert. And it's this. I have a tendency to focus on production, which is why we get a lot of stuff done here. But I will do it at the cost of my own self sometimes. And one of the reasons I chose the word hone for 2024 was to stop doing that, because that doesn't make me healthy, and that doesn't make me a good leader or example if I'm just constantly wearing myself out. And things have gotten a lot better in that regard. But music, for somebody who is, I probably would have been diagnosed ADHD had any evaluation been allowed to happen. Like when you look at how I am, and it's like either that or on the spectrum or something, like not neurotypical, but I don't know, because I don't feel a need to put effort into being diagnosed with anything at this point. I just know that I very strongly relate to hyperfocus and scatter mode, and that like series of things, and not being able to turn the head off. And some of the, like I've told the story of the trail of tears I leave behind when I get into cleaning the house sometimes. And it's like everything's half done at the end of the trail of tears. And I've started, like literally I have a party in a week, and I was like, I need to take everything out of my dresser and refold it, because nobody was going to look at my dresser at this party, by the way. But in order to put things away, I have to take everything out of my dresser and fold it and get rid of the things that I no longer want. Just FYI. So music for me saved my life. I was in a really hard place. I had not played music for a long time, and all of my friends had to do with work. So this was before I changed jobs and started doing the coffee and the podcast and all the things I love to do. And I realized that none of my friends were friends too, as part of that. They were people I work with who have to pretend they're friends because that's how we do work. And it's very interesting who from that time in my life I'm still actually talking to, because those are my actual friends, right? So I looked at my assistant and I was like, I just wish there was a classical choir I could sing in. I don't want to sing in a church choir. I want to sing in a classical choir. And she came back 10 minutes later and said, there's a classical choir in Cookeville. And so I joined the choir, and I have a degree in music. And so I know how to read music, but I hadn't read at that point. I don't think I'd read a note of music in 15 years. And so it was like having to learn to read music all over again, going back to that choir. And so I went in, and I remember like that first rehearsal, I could barely make sound. And and I was running out of breath all the time, and I'd basically forgotten how to sing the way I used to be able to sing. And then it started coming back because the memories, like I had literally learned a lot about music. So the memories started coming back, and I started having this connection from the notes to the things coming out. And I was never the best sight reader in the world because I learned very quickly by hearing. And so then, like, once I've done it wrong, I'm like, oh, I see I did that wrong. Okay, now I'll do it right. And then usually I do it right from there, unless I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. But there's a mathematical right brain part of music if you're going from written notes. You're like reading a graph. You have time and pitch, basically, is what you're reading. And there's some other things going on there, but basically it's time and pitch. So you're reading a graph, but it's also an emotional, like left brain, artistic, creative attachment, because you're taking this stuff that's written and you're interpreting it emotionally through sound. And so what I find is that music has been the thing, one of the big things that have allowed me to reprogram myself, become productive, deal with some of the symptoms of how my brain works. It's like, okay, we linked the two sides. We're being intellectual, we're being emotional, we're getting all those things in one place, and we're moving forward. And had I not made space for that, that would have not happened. And that goes to like, what you make space for is what you do. And so if you're sitting here going, I wish I could do music more. I wish I could spin my wool more. I wish I could can more. I wish I had more time for seedlings. I wish I had more, whatever your wish is. If you're wishing yourself, ask yourself, have I made space for it? Example of this. I used to make fairly elaborate medieval costumes because I was in the SCA. Pretty good at sewing. I was. I'm sure I wouldn't be now if you put me in front of a sewing machine. I mean, I remember some stuff, but I'm not like that. I could, like, without patterns, make clothing. And I was not the best at it, but I was not the worst at it. Better than most people at it. I haven't really sewed, like I've done a few sewing projects. I haven't really sewed like that in more than 20 years. And a couple years ago, I started wishing that I was sewing. And then I looked around and I'm like, I have a sewing machine. It's in the back of a closet. I don't have anywhere where I can actually sew because I haven't made space for it. And then I started realizing, okay, so if I want to sew, I need to make space for it. And that means something that's in the space now needs to go away. Well, back to music. I've had my keyboard in my bedroom for a couple years, and it worked because I used to have my studio in there. So like my recording studio for this show was in my bedroom in a corner. And then I moved it back to my guest room because my mom hasn't been in my guest room as much in the last year. And I was like, well, it's nice to have a little elbow room in the studio. So it's back in there. And then my keyboard was in my bedroom. It became a place where I hung clothes. Like literally didn't play it at all because my bedroom is not where I go to make space for music. The living room is where I make space for music, or my office is where I make space for music. So I realized in the last 6 months, if I'm going to make space for music, I need to move the keyboard into my living room, which is where it is now. And I say all of that because as you're going through building the life you choose, becoming a free person, and making yourself as free as you possibly can be, because that's all we can ever hope to do, right? Remember to make space for the things you want and not the things you don't want. Like if you don't want to have an elaborate canning kitchen with an elaborate canning schedule and can all the 5,000 jars every year, don't build a canning kitchen. Just because that's what homesteaders do, don't do that. If what you like to do is grow the vegetables and you really wish somebody else would can them, find somebody who has the canning kitchen, who likes to can them and doesn't want to grow the food, and work with them, right? Like when you make space for things, you can do the wrong thing and make space for things you don't want to do. That's all I'm saying. So that brings me back to like the word hone. Part of the word hone was really to focus on making space for the things I want and not for the things I don't want. And what I realized by the end of the year is So like the ADHD house can become filled with broken some days. Someday I'm gonna blah 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 blah. And you get interested in something and you buy all the things, or you find all the things to do the thing that you're interested in, and then you're not interested in it anymore, and you didn't quite finish it, and it just sits there in your way, and then you're on to the next thing. That's a thing that happens here. And for years I would keep things around because I'm going to finish it. And I finally realized last year that I'm not going to finish it because it's no longer, it's just, I thought I liked it, but I don't love it. Right? Okay. So here's a hard one for me. I have a really nice bass guitar. It's an MTD. When I found this bass guitar, like the clouds parted, the sun came out, a beam came down, and I was playing this bass guitar, and it was like, this guitar is for you. And at the time, it was probably a $400 bass or something. It wasn't that expensive in today's money, but at the time, I could barely afford the thing, and I bought it, and I played in the band with it, and I loved the bass, and I have not touched that bass except for to move it out of my way in 15 years. I've spent a couple weeks here and there, like doinking around on the bass. Why do I have the bass? It's taking up space. You know what I can do? I can sell the bass. And then if I decide to play bass again, I can bring it back in. What I'd rather do is learn the banjo that's over there that needs to go to the repair store, because I dropped a phone on it and it knocked the bridge out, and I need help getting the bridge in the exact right place where it needs to be on the banjo, because I'm pretty new to banjo. But I've been keeping it because music's important to me, and I need to put music in my life. And I told you guys why I need music in my life. So just because music is something I should make space for doesn't mean that every musical instrument in the world needs to be in my house. Because if I'm not using it, why keep it here? If I'm not having jam sessions and being like, here, play my bass, it doesn't make sense. And, I'm just sharing this so you can take what you will from that. So we're heading into Christmas. And I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about Christmas. Like, some people love the holiday, they're all in. We're making Taj Mahal look like Christmas puked under there in time for the party. That's why the decorating committee showed up. The reason I'm calling it the decorating committee is I sent a note out today. Has anybody seen any mistletoe? The decorating committee would like to know. Because if I can find mistletoe, I'll hang some on my ceiling fan just for fun. Anyway, if Christmas is something you hate, obviously, build the life you choose. Don't participate. But let's go back and think about what we're doing at Christmas, right? As I was on stage yesterday, I heard myself saying these words, olden times and ancient rhymes of love and dreams to share. Okay, so what we culturally equate with the practices of Christmas is older, simpler times. And we sing carols, ancient rhymes, right? And they're talking about love and dreams. Like, literally, we have not changed as humans. Love and dreams is what we want to be sharing with each other. And we're programmed to only do that one time of year at Christmas. That's a little sad, isn't it? That's a little sad. That's not how I want to live my I think you should sing on a podcast once in a while. I probably will. I just sang, but not really sang. Shouldn't we be sharing love and dreams every day? Isn't that why we're building the life we choose? But as we go into Christmas, I think about the things I really like about Christmas. And I talked about the pressure of gifts. So one of the things I have missed since I've been single, which has been for like 5 years now, is that it used to be on Christmas morning, there were stockings, and there wasn't anything expensive in the stocking, but it was kind of fun to go through and be like, oh, I didn't even know I wanted these Post-it notes, but now I have Post-it notes. And you're right, I've been looking for Post-it notes for 3 weeks or whatever. What I liked about the stockings is that there was thought put into it, and time put into it, and the entertainment of opening it. And I liked making the stocking too. And so that is actually a tradition I would like to bring back into my life by next year. And I finally had the idea this year. Anybody in our network who's like, I want to do the stocking thing too. That's really fun. We could like do a thing where everybody buys like 5 stocking things and we mail them. And like there's a group of people. However, I don't know how to organize it exactly. But so that everybody has a stocking on Christmas that's entertaining and nothing expensive. And the only like trick there is that mailing can be expensive depending on how far away, but like stupid little things, maybe little handmade things, maybe a little treat you made or whatever. And we mail them on a certain schedule. It has to be something that won't go bad. And then everybody gets to open them on Christmas and you have this stocking. So yeah, Margot says, I'm so in on the stocking exchange. Margot, let's talk because I'd like to do that by next year. Because it's like the one thing at this time of year that's like a tradition that I don't get to do unless I mean, I had one last year when I flew home to my West Coast family. We did stockings and that was it. But it's just not easy to do, when you're single and nobody's going to come over for Christmas. So anyway, yeah, we'll get that set up and like, it doesn't have to be expensive. That's the whole point. It shouldn't be expensive. It should just be fun. And that goes back to having fun for Christmas. I always remember, like, I've told this story a few times. My grandma, when she was growing up in the Depression, there was one year where they hadn't had meat for weeks, maybe months. And they didn't have anything for Christmas dinner. And nothing special anyway. And the neighbors slaughtered either a cow or a pig, and I think it was a pig, and gave the heart to my great-grandfather, my grandmother's father. And her mother, and she always says she was Mennonite, so she knew how to cook a heart. Okay, so we're talking about a long, long time ago. And apparently you still had to be Mennonite to know how to cook hearts, just FYI. I always think that part's funny. So she cooked this heart and they all sat around the table and there were like 6 kids and the parents and one heart and everybody got to have some. And I think it was stuffed with something and slow cooked is how that was done. I've been looking at slow heart cooking recipes as a result of this story. And she said it was the best Christmas dinner she ever had. And it wasn't because heart is the best thing you can eat at dinner. It was 2 things. 1, they hadn't had meat in a long time and the neighbor gave them this heart. And 2, it was because the family was together. That's why. And I don't know who your family is, whether they're your biological family or the family you choose, but you have an opportunity to make a memory like that right now. And so that's just, I wanted to talk about that before we go into the 2 weeks off. Bonnie says, I'm single too. Yeah, so Bonnie's in. Yeah, we could totally have fun with this, guys. You don't have to be single to do it. It's just, it could be fun. The LFTN stocking exchange. I don't know. I don't know why it took me this many years to figure it out. I've been missing that since my first year when that didn't happen. And I was like, man, I really, really missed that. And it's not the stuff. It's just I don't know. It's the feeling of it that's there. So that brings us to the word of the year. I bet you guys who has a guess what my word of the year might be on an episode with a title Renew Yourself, Renew the World. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. It's not renew. So it almost was renew. Like that was a very close contender. And we've talked about the word of the year being one thing you focus on to improve your life as throughout the year as you move forward. And this year, oh, that's a good word, Beth Emily. This year, I had a really hard time choosing the word of the year. I don't feel like I'm done with Hone all the way. I've made great strides with Hone. Like I'm sitting at the counter half an hour a day doing like coding and QuickBooks and all sorts of stuff that are really helping me make good decisions. But so I thought I was going to do Hone again for the longest time. And then I did the show about word of the year. And then I was like, oh, like maybe I'll do roadblocks. Wow, you guys have fun suggestions there. We've got music, you, and self. Interesting. Um, but I wanted to have a bigger impact than the word renew would bring. And I've talked to people, I've talked to Chat GPT, I'll admit that. I've been like, what words are like this word? I've gone German and English because maybe there's a German word that's a better fit because meanings are like subtly different. And what I was looking for in a word was something that sort of indicates fundamentals. I'm building on fundamentals to grow, eliminating roadblocks that hold me back, develop better fundamentals and habits, but also more prosperity, more money. And I realized because of the word hone that I have built roadblocks for myself by not taking care of fundamentals. And those, every time I get rid of another roadblock, it's like the dam breaks and a whole bunch of good stuff happens to fill that void that was being taken up, that space that was being taken up by the roadblock I built for myself. Anything from construction things to, you know, financial coding for taxes, which is a huge roadblock for me, to not putting away the dried herbs, right? Like now that that roadblock's gone, I can put everything away on the shelf and I can move the shelf and then the shelf is gone and then I have that space, right? Bonnie says refine, interesting choice. So I was going to do the word roadblock. And the thing about the word of the year is you kind of usually get the opposite of the word for a while you figure it out. And I just felt weird. I was like, I don't want to end the year with roadblocks. I want to bust through roadblocks. I want to eliminate them. And then the word prosper came. Prosperity, prosper. And then Jenny suggested craft or create. So I went to create, and then she was like, "Well, how about craft because it's a little bit more tangible." And then I was like, that's not quite right. Like it doesn't, like the fundamentals, the grow, the roadblocks, the habits, the money, like that's not quite there. And then I came to the word renew. And that was yesterday. Like I've been pretty panicked all weekend. I've been thinking a lot about the word. I've journaled about it. Reinvest. Reinvent came up, Rachel. Um, Yeah, renew. I was like, it's not quite right. Like, renew is a pretty good fit, though, and it's a pretty strong word. And I can totally rally about that. And especially if I take it a little out of context and focus on the new in renew, right? But then I was looking at the word Neuaufladen in German, which ends up putting a little bit more of a spiritual bent on the word, on the sort of renew or recharge. Um, Aufladen is more like specific to batteries. Neu Aufladen is sort of like a spiritual renewal. You can use it in that context or a recharge. John says focus. I did focus one year. Um, that's a good word. So I almost was going to do Neu Aufladen and just go German. It's fine. Refurbish. Yep, refurbish. I felt like refurbish was going to bring too much of my past forward, though. So I was like, eh. So this morning, as I was writing down, like, I started talking to Tactical about, I'm going to talk about my word of the year. I think it's going to be Neue Aufladen and blah, 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 blah. And then I said a word. And I was like, that's the word. That's the one. And it's none of the words I've told you. So I'm going to read you the uh, I'm going to read you the definition. And you guys tell me what you think it is. To improve or enhance the quality, value, or substance of something. For example, adding nutrients to soil enriches it for better plant growth. Introducing diverse experiences can enrich someone's life. Providing additional details or creativity can enrich a story or idea. It's about making something better, fuller, or more meaningful. What do you guys think the word of the year is? Anybody? We got enhance. Enhance is close. I can tell you I just said it 3 times. And it's enrich. My word of the year is enrich, because I really think that does encompass both the dealing with the negative stuff that needs to be handled, the roadblocks I've built for myself. Yep, enrich. We got enrich. 2 guesses. You guys probably guessed before I said it. While also that forward, improving, refining, and it has the word rich in it. Not that I think I'm gonna get rich because of the word enrich, but it makes it something. I truly believe when I create value for people around me, that it will come back in the form of, prosperity here on the homestead. And so I think enrich is perfect because it's not just like money, it's enriching the world around me, because when the world around me is enriched, then I am also enriched. So that is my word of the year. Have you guys chosen your word of the year? You want to share your words here? I'm just curious because I want to know what your word of the year is. And, if you don't have a word to share yet, definitely shoot me an email when you choose your word, because I think it's part of the fun of the thing. Yeah. Bonnie Blue says it has a positive ring to it. Exactly. Roadblocks was not, I was like, I feel like that's just going to cause more problems than I need it to cause. Enrich. How can I enrich the experience at Self-Reliance Festival? How can I enrich the atmosphere of the party? We have a decorating committee. It's going to make the Christmas party way cooler, because usually we just have a tree. But now I have like Christmas vomit under Taj Mahal. No, it looks really good. We've got lights up, and my door is wrapped like a present right now. My front door is. That's really fun. And then there's some Christmas trees on my bar over there. Also, just as proof, let me see if I can. Ooh, the keyboard is in the living room. I just have to amplify it. And the thing I'm not quite sure how to do is amplify it, because I have a giant amp. And I put that closer, so now my head's like all cut off. I have a giant amp. It's huge, and I will bring it out here. And that's what I decided last night I'm going to do, is bring my amp out. But it's like a bass amp with a bass head, and it's a huge speaker. I'm looking for a smaller way to amplify that long term. And I looked at piano amps yesterday. Can I just get active speakers that are little? Like, I don't need it to be this rich, robust sound right now. Like, if I need that for a gig, I'll deal with it. But yeah, anyway. Margot says I need to think on it some more, but lean towards organize. But now that word seems lame. Organize is a good word. Not yet, because I was going to choose organize, and I can't afford the flip side. So still the disorganization of the organize. Hey, Bonnie and Margot, you two need to talk about different concepts around organizing and see if you come up with a word. Margot did purge last year, and now there's stuff everywhere. Yeah. So tidy. Maybe that's your word. I don't know. Let's just find out. Anyway, so that's our last Monday episode of 2025. It's all about enrichment for me for the next year. And the reason I do that is to really focus in on something that can move the whole thing forward. And of course, you know that January 9th, we have the My 3 Things webinar, and that's about building your life strategic plan. My vision hasn't really changed since I wrote that 5 years ago or 6 years ago. I redid my life plan. And what I'm doing to get there changes, though. And that's when, like, the word of the year can help, or the My 3 Things really help. But when I look at where I've come now versus where I was 5 years ago, it's a huge difference. I'm a much healthier person, and the world, like the homestead's in better, it's in better shape, surprisingly, even after the last year of only one person doing much on the homestead. And I just filled with hope because I did it. And that's why I'm doing that webinar on the 9th. So if you haven't signed up for that, just probably the easiest way to find the link is to go to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on it under events. Or if you go to NicoleSauce.com, you can do it. So anyway, I hope you make time to do what's best for you over the next little bit as we go into, the break. And I hope that you get a break. I know some of you are working through the whole thing, but I hope you get a break afterwards if you can't have a break during the Christmas season, and use that time to recharge. I know I'm using my 2 weeks this time. Like, I am defending my 2 weeks, unlike last year, and I'm gonna like commit to getting that reset because 2025 is gonna be awesome. But I'm pretty sure Enrich is going to take some work. So anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. 2, consider becoming a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more about that. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.